What are your thoughts on Thomas Tuchel saying that England played with no identity last summer and claiming they were more scared of dropping out of the tournament than having the excitement and hunger to win it, which we definitely saw with Spain?
So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not like he stood on a table and gone, England played with no identity last summer. They were more scared of dropping out of the tournament than having the excitement and hunger to win it. But often, this is part of being an England manager, isn't it? These things will be framed like that, and that they will be taken like that. But I think actually, I think it's very, very easy to make the argument that was the case. I don't think it's necessarily a criticism of England or of Southgate. We obviously spoke about this yesterday on the show, and I think it was something that was common throughout the tournament. Southgate himself said, wasn't he wasn't asking them to sort of sit deep and do a lot of the things that many England teams have done before, where they just kind of revert into this type and revert into this habit. And actually, if England are going to go that one step further and actually win something from the position of a final, they have to break that cycle. And I think acknowledging it, confronting that head on, and perhaps I suppose even by mentioning it, making it a kind of making it a target, eliminating it, that is, I think that's a really good thing, because it's honest, isn't it? I don't think Tuchel has any reason to have to stand on ceremony, and like I said, I don't think he has been critical of, well, I think he has been critical of Southgate, but in the sense that it's a critique of him rather than a criticism of him.
It's a criticism of his team rather than the man himself, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think actually I quite like it. It's quite refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I love Southgate and blah, 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 but I thought it was kind of fair comment from Tuchel. I mean, I think to pick up from what you said about Southgate saying that they weren't telling the players to drop deep, I think Southgate went hyper pragmatic too much, perhaps, because
it defined his reign, really, didn't it?
It did, even though England played differently in the previous tournaments. But a bit like the whole kind of Paul Scholes never played centre midfield for England. People go on the last tournament where he did play centre midfield for England, and I think with Southgate, some people were moaning about the playing style as well. But I think because of that last tournament, it was quite.
I think that has kind of made people feel like the whole Southgate era was really, really turgid and boring. And definitely there were times where the performances weren't always that inspiring. But that last one, the performances in the Euros are actually quite strange now, aren't they? With a bit of kind of dust settled on them and with a bit of time to reflect. It was so bad at times. It was like Capello's England, but we somehow got to the final.
Well, I think because people were saying that the team, you got the players that can do that. So if you had a manager who was a little bit more inspiring or inspired, maybe. I mean, the final was a perfect example with Kane clearly injured, and he had been throughout the tournament, although he did score 3 goals, and that turned out to be quite crucial.
I think he's hard done by, actually, on that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't fit. He wasn't, So, for example, bringing on Ollie Watkins at half-time would have been a better shout. And I think when you look at it, Spain were the best team in that tournament, absolutely. But when they come out in the second half, their linchpin in the centre of the pitch, Rodri, is not there. And you think, okay, could England maybe could he go, right, lads, we're going to do this? But it just wasn't the plan. It was all about moments. He spoke about that. Let's be really, really tight. We won't be beaten, and you've got the quality to provide those moments. That took England to the final. Yes, with an albeit easier route than Spain did. But anyway.
Does it take a more work to change that performance into a less pragmatic and a more dogma in the fight, dogmatic position?
But the funny thing is, Pete, though, is that Thomas Tuchel is a very pragmatic manager. That's kind of really, and pragmatism's fine. That's not a criticism.
Absolutely necessary, isn't it?
Tactically pragmatic, I would say.
Yeah, but I think
he still wants to play a certain kind of football from what we've seen in kind of.
But he can do. I mean, look, he's a successful manager. I mean, that Champions League win with Chelsea is the one that we kind of defer to, even though he had success elsewhere. But that was particularly impressive, especially beating that Man City team in the final. And I think sometimes for the big games, he'll look at the opposition and he'll think, oh, right, okay, I don't think, and that's the thing, I think he looks at the opposition and goes, right, how can we beat them? Whereas someone like Pep Guardiola, yes, he's got more tools than people would say, but he is the ultimate kind of, in the modern era, kind of philosopher, and he's got his ideology and he's going to play in a certain way kind of thing, no matter what the opposition, etc., although not quite true, but if talking generally, So I think with Tuchel saying that England will play in a Premier League style, that's the thing that I find interesting, because the Premier League style quite quickly as we got into the 21st century, that was heavily scrutinised and criticised on the international stage. It became quite apparent that sometimes our big hitters and players, you go back to the so-called golden generation, all the names, Gerrard, Lampard, Beckham, Scholes, blah, 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 fabulous players. But Wayne Bridge. But when they played against, a Croatia side who we didn't know as well, or a Portugal side or whoever, it's kind of like, but these players have grown up playing. It's about technique. It's about keeping the ball. It's about all these things that we don't really do that well in this country. We're better at it now, but still not the masters, far from it. And that style and that sort of thing seemed to trump us quite quickly and not easily, but effectively in tournaments.
What characterises the Premier League style now, though? Is it your Pep Guardiola?
No, it's not.
No end product kind of vibe.
They did have an end product quite a lot under Guardiola, Man City, to be fair to them.
Yeah, it was
for a long while. Fair's fair.
Yeah, all right, fair's fair.
But I think what he's talking about is let's press, let's play high octane, let's be a little bit more direct, all that kind of stuff that in 70s, 80s English football influenced the gegenpress and Jurgen Klopp style and so on. Klopp always found it fascinating that he felt that the England, certainly at national level, kind of abandoned their principles a bit. Now, it's all very well saying that we're going to do this Premier League style, but again, that style was criticised because some managers apparently tried it. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But that style of play is quite energy sapping.
Yeah.
And when you get to a tournament when players are tired, as clearly England players were in the Euros, and when you're playing it's the summer, right? So it's going to be hot weather, especially in North America. Sorry about going on about that again.
No, but you're right too, because I can completely see a situation where it's like we're 1-0 up after an hour. It's like, probably fine from here. Yeah. And then it's just the worst half an hour you've ever seen.
Yeah, but you don't think you can do that, though, as an England side? They know how to defend. They know how to sort of sit back a little bit. So.
He will need, again, if, presuming England get to the World Cup, he will need to be, to counteract that. And again, Jude Bellingham looked exhausted come the Euros. Yeah, he made a contribution. So it's you can say we're going to play this style. That gets everybody excited. And I think with Tuchel, there's no point in trying to say we're going to play like Spain, whichever Spanish side it is, because they've not all played the same way. But you get the kind of core principles there. England are not going to do that because they've not been schooled in that way. So I think he's talking a good game. It will be fascinating to see. As I say, we're recording this before the Albania game. But even if we record it, that's one game. It's not a huge sample size. It will be very interesting to see how he manages to do it. There were flickers of this with Southgate in qualification. But when it came to the tournament, perhaps not so much. But can you do that at a tournament?
Yeah, and also I think it's interesting that you mentioned Spain there, because if you think of the Spanish identity and the style of their football and the history of where it came from, it's actually Dutch, really, isn't it?
Yes.
And it shows that you can transplant these things.
The Cruyffian principles
Absolutely.
Is the way of...
Yeah, which is, has had a massive effect on football all over the world, but that is really evident in the way Spain play, and a lot of the Spanish club teams play as well. And it's interesting, isn't it, that it can be a real millstone, actually, your national identity in terms of your tactical style and the way you play. And be very interested to see what Tuchel's interpretation of Premier League style is, especially someone who's managed in the Premier League, who has won the Champions League with a Premier League club and actually knows it very, very well. And let's be honest, I mean, in the modern era, he's probably the best tactical coach that England have had. Yep. You might look at Capello and think that he should have been that, but it wasn't like that in practice.
By the time he came along, Capello's
was out of date, essentially. Yeah. And Tuchel does not feel like he's out of date at all. So it'd be very interesting.
Hey, we'll find out, Jim.
This will test you.
I just almost wish that England were a bit crapper. Do you know what I mean? Because the way that he sort of came in at Chelsea, and Chelsea were a wreck, but like behind him, obviously, he papered over so many kind of chairman-based cracks for quite a long time. He didn't get the chance to sort of reap his reward, you would probably say. He was sacked before that happened, and he got them a Champions League, 2 domestic finals and stuff. It was a hell of a performance. So you almost
bodes well for tournament football.
Well, I just wish that England were just a bit more of a joke, really, so he could do a bit more work on the picking us up.
I mean, there'll be plenty of jokes at us. Don't worry about that.
I'm sure. Yeah, this is just all set up, isn't it?
Yeah. Sure. Okay, fair,
I mean, Peter, we're talking about a man who's been parachuted in to win us the World Cup.
Yeah.
I can envisage some jokes coming our way in the whether it's next summer or even before. So don't worry about that. There, a lot of people get a lot of mileage out of the England team, but so I suppose, I think that. Yeah, my thoughts would be interesting, kind of exciting. It's the kind of stuff that you almost sort of want to hear him say. Whether he'll do it, because you could argue, have England had a manager that has tried to really play on the front foot? When was the last one? I would say this century not.
No, I think maybe Venables, maybe Hoddle.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Venables, perhaps. But again, it was only one tournament, and it was a home tournament.
And we're probably thinking of 20 minutes against the Netherlands as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing, isn't it?
I think on the odd occasion under Southgate, but again, I'm probably in a minority, even though I think the facts do speak for themselves. But as a whole, Southgate was all about not losing, keep the ball.
Certainly
it was
in the tournaments themselves.
Yeah, Portugal 2016, France 2018. We know that he sort of based it a lot on that. So I don't think Southgate would be considered as a front foot, exciting kind of manager. And all those who came before him, you go to Hodgson, not the case. Allardyce will never know. No. McLaren, no. Capello, as you said, no. Sven wasn't the case as well. It was all about get in front and try and defend.
Sven was very 4-4-2.
Totally, yeah. I mean, even Keegan, who we thought would, he just didn't quite cut the mustard and so on.
Have you seen everyone's first matches that they took the stewardship of England for? It's actually quite fascinating. I think the better teams you play, the more success you are, or the better at football you seem to be. Alf Ramsey obviously played France first.
Right.
France absolutely hammered them. Sven.
Yeah,
England 3, Spain 0 in 2001. But everyone else, it's been your Norway's, your Slovakia's. Gareth's first match was obviously Malta. Uh-huh. I do think that playing decent sides would probably sort of, it's just a great start to your England career. It sets the stall out a little bit, yeah.
So Albania
Steve's England 4, Greece 0, rubbish.
Yeah, yeah, there you are.
So in this same interview where he mentioned identity and that sort of stuff, he was asked what was missing from the performances, and he said some interesting things within there. One of them was the repetition of patterns, and also seeming to contradict that, the freedom of players, the expression of players. Now it might just be it's a bit of word salad because he's been asked the question on the spot, but those two things are very, very interesting to me because it suggests quite a lot of diversity within how he expects England to play, where they will have essentially a set menu of moves that they can try, but if they don't feel it's on, just go on, Jude, fill your boots. That's potentially exciting.
Yeah, I think so as well. And like I say, I think England fans have been crying out for some enjoyable football and something to get excited about. And we've had the excitement of going in tournaments. And like I say, I think under Southgate, even though people have said this, that and the other, there were a lot of goals scored, generally speaking. I know a lot of them came against Panama and Iran, but there were more goals, whereas before that, England would turn up tournaments and just get the odd goal here and there. And it really was like, oh, blimey, this is not what we want. So I think that the playing style is important. Luke and I spoke about that. But I don't think it's necessarily... It has to be some sort of beautiful, we're going to out Spain and all this, because it's not going to happen. That's where his pragmatism will be. And I think the pragmatism is, right, you're a group of English players. Yes, you're modern English players, but what have you grown up playing? And I think he's going to use that. And I think he is probably the best man realistically they could have got for the job. So
it's certainly the tallest. I'll have him that.
Certainly the tallest, Peter. Certainly the tallest. Jim, you've got another England-based question.
I do have another England-based question from Brian on email. Don't know if he pronounces it like that. With only 16 months until the start of the World Cup, how important is it that Thomas Tuchel nails down his best 11 as soon as possible?
Yes. What do you reckon, Petey?
I think defensively he has to. But everything else could be kind of up for grabs, really, because he's not he's not going to be one of those sort of 2 a.m. in the down at the training ground working out the spreadsheet every night, because obviously he's not even going to be in England for a lot of it apparently. But his kind of over-reliance on attack will probably see him being a bit more pragmatic as to what his what the players he's got available. So I think he's got an appetite for a surprise here and there. So I think he'll nail down the defence, and then just everything else is up for grabs, really. So he'll just go for the fastest. Cameron Archer will probably play at some point. He'll probably get his full cap.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think the defence will be interesting, which is why when you look at the squad at the moment, it is fascinating to see who we assume partner Mark Gay, who's the kind of more senior player in there in terms of caps and experience. And Gay's done enough to be a starter for England. I don't think anybody would complain too much about that. Although a few left-footed centre-halves in there, so perhaps Gay will maybe play on that right side, even though he's
Gay is right-footed, isn't he?
But comfortable playing on the left, So it's early days, of course, and I know it's only 60 months. There's only a certain amount of training sessions he has and meetups he has with those players. But you want to have a good look at everybody, and I think that one can look too much into all this kind of stuff. And that could well be the case with Jordan Henderson, even though he spoke about, he embodies this, that and the other. Because if he feels like, actually, do you know what, we're okay in that department, and Henderson is not the youngest and we've got other options, I think he may well kind of, he may well like drop him for the next.
Do you see him as a bit of a link man, kind of him being
possibly
like just between the old guard and the new guard, just getting a bit of intel, I suppose.
And that could be good for the first couple of sessions. And if he feels like I don't really need that, whatever.
Yeah.
So we may feel we may look too much into this, but in terms of nailing that, the clock is ticking. We're in kind of unfamiliar territory here because it is that short-term contract, and the brief is clear.
Yeah.
And Tuchel is under no illusions and is speaking about that as well. So I think that's why we're thinking, okay, who's the starting 11? We've got to be. Well, things change, injuries happen. So actually, you wouldn't want Tuchel to be picking the same 11 for games. It just won't happen. And also, again, you want a core of a side, definitely. And I think the defence is one of those ones where you get fewer, you two centre halves.
Yeah, if you have a settled defence, it's more likely to stay as the same unit, isn't it?
You tend to have two centre halves if you play in a back four, which most people do. They tend to stay throughout the tournament.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You're not too much chopping and changing there.
Yeah, but even then, though, I mean, maybe someone gets a suspension, maybe somebody gets injured. You do need a department there. And actually, if you look at England in tournaments and most teams in tournaments, it's not like they play the same 11 throughout the games. It
got a
fluctuates quite a lot. You absolutely do have a core.
It fluctuates a little bit, I would say.
But I think you've got to have your plans at A, B, and C in terms of personnel, right? And you've got to be prepared for various challenges that come your way. So I don't think he's going to kind of focus too heavily on his best set 11 because, as you say, injuries happen, but also form fluctuates massively.
We've got a whole season before the World Cup.
Absolutely.
We're talking as if the World Cup's this summer.
And there's the Club World Cup in the summer as well that's going to probably impact the readiness of some of those players.
That's
down
still
the
happening,
line.
is it?
Apparently so.
Yeah, okay. So I don't think it's particularly important, to be honest. However, you do need to, if he's choosing like wildly different squads, if we're seeing 8 to 10 changes every time a squad comes around when everyone's fit, that's when you kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to see that. I think you're going to see the familiar faces. For me, it's the area which I'm quite interested to see is what he's going to do with the midfield dynamic. Is Declan Rice going to play his England role or his Arsenal role? I suspect England role.
I suspect so too.
Is he going to maybe in future or near squads bring in Adam Morton, who's a player that people have been talking about a lot? Are we going to see three more, if you like, traditional but proper central midfielders in there with Jones, Bellingham, Rice, maybe Wharton, maybe one or two others? Or is he going to do what some people want and think Rice and then Bellingham and Palmer in there as well, a bit more attacking? I think that's quite fascinating.
Is there a bit of pressure on Pickford maybe?
No, I think Pickford is one of a few or maybe a handful of players that will be starting in that World Cup.
I agree.
Obviously injury free. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to answer more of your questions. Petey D, you've got the next question.
I've got the next question, and I'm going to spit it out my mouth. It's from Dan on email. Oh, Dan. Do you think Jim Ratcliffe has a point in suggesting that Manchester United should offer different ticket prices for faithful local supporters who attend regularly compared to those travelling from London or abroad?
Firstly, Dan, it's Sir Jim Ratcliffe.
Have some respect.
Have respect for
Sir Jim Cliff.
for the great for the great man. Yeah, he said this, didn't he, in the Gary Neville interview? He said they talked about faithful local supporters compared to those travelling. He specifically said London, and then he said Hong Kong, but we can just say abroad.
Right, okay. Yeah.
With that. As a fellow Jim, do you have any particularly strong thoughts about what your man's been saying?
So many evil Jims. It's infuriating. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I will be very surprised if Man United start offering discounts for people who've been to a certain amount of games. Because I think how does this work in a practical sense? If you've got a season ticket, you've got your season ticket. I doubt you'll get some money back at the end of the season if you go to a certain amount of games and prove that you personally have been in those seats.
Yep.
So I suppose if they do something where, like, if you go to 5 games, you get a discount on the next one, that sounds good in practice, doesn't it? But it's very difficult to actually like, do you have to live within a certain postcode or something to do that? Like, what if you were someone from Manchester and you had to move away, and then you still come back to games at great expense to go and spend money in the ground? Like,
well, I mean, this is always how I've
punished. Right?
This is how I've always followed my side, obviously, because it's very expensive all the time. Whenever I want a ticket, it's always out on the open market or resellers or whatever. But you do sort of think, how is this realistically going to manifest itself? He's not going to reduce the price of a season ticket for people who've had the season ticket for ages. Mm-hmm. So therefore, he probably thinks, well, I'll just up as much as I can the corporate side of things, which means with the new stadium that may or may not arrive, the corporate tickets will be, there'll just be more of them, won't they, I suppose? Yeah. So he's probably sort of thinking, well, the only people who are week in, week out spending money like water on corporate tickets are people who don't normally take these tickets. So it'll just mean a massive increase in posh seats and if anything, a moderate increase on the regular season ticketed ones. But I can't help but think there's a world here where Jim at some point will screw a lot of fans off. So
yeah, I mean,
that's the baseline, isn't it, for Jim?
Yeah, maybe to me, it means he's looking at that Jim. Going, So Jim's thinking, if they do come from that London, maybe we can get them to pay a bit more. Yeah. That's the angle here. He can't look at anything without nowadays. Basically breaking it down into constituent parts and thinking, how can I monetize each one?
Yeah, as you say, I don't think there's going to be any discounts.
No.
They're going to put tariffs.
Also, though, I mean, blimey, it's the practicalities of it. The idea of local supporters. Do you need a Manchester postcode or something?
Yeah, and it's a bit gatekeepy that way, isn't it?
Hey, the world is isolations these days.
Do you know what? No, but Pete, it is a little bit populist sounding. Because if you do travel up from London, you might be a Mancunian, as you mentioned, Jim. You might have moved away or whatever, and it's just so hard to kind of police. I mean, I do understand the point.
If you're coming from Hong Kong, you're like, you've already spent your money. Don't worry about it. You've
demonstrated some passion. And
you see those Korean people at Spurs, you go, well done, because that is a trip.
Yeah,
can't even fly over Russia now. Impossible.
Yeah, I just don't think they're passionate enough. Because if they were passionate enough, they'd move to the local area. I do get the fact, though, that if you have... I mean, this is the thing. It's about ticket prices, really, here. Because if you do have local people who can't afford it, it is a bit of a sickening when you see... I understand the unease one might have with lots of tourists turning up and people who are deemed to be seen as maybe not proper supporters or whatever. But I think the fingers are being pointed in the wrong direction here, because it's often again, without sounding a bit too sort of populist myself, it is almost like the corporates, you see, who turned up and it's like, this is a game of football, I turned up, or I didn't bother, I gave the season tickets to someone else, and so on and so forth. That's the kind of thing. And those who do have season tickets but often don't turn up and then sell them again, those are the things you want to tighten up with. And I think, again, I don't think it's a geographical thing. I think it's, if you've had a season ticket for X amount of years, then you should be rewarded for that, for being faithful. There are people who have season tickets who rarely go and sell them off game by game, and I think that's the kind of thing that pisses fans off.
Even then, though, and I do understand that,
they're the ones that can buy usually.
Exactly, the people buying those tickets are still fans, and they're still turning up to support the team.
I'm not talking about those fans. I'm saying if you want to try and do this local thing, or those who attend regularly was the word to use, then those who are not selling their season tickets every week. Because, if you want to cultivate a certain atmosphere, you want to get something, you want people attending regularly. You want to have enough room for people who go on a one-off or tourists and so on, because we've gone as tourists and games abroad and so on. But those who are selling off their tickets that they have in their season tickets because they go once every couple of months or something. It's kind of like, that's the kind of thing that I think pisses people off.
Yeah,
and we had that when we went to Real Madrid versus Atletico Madrid. We'd bought tickets that somebody had done that for.
Yeah, sure.
And you could see some of the people be like, another group of tourists coming in this section, in this end. And it's kind of like, well, what's that about? So it happens the world over, and I understand it. And so from Sir Jim's point of view, if you're trying to tighten things up, then do it in a way that is more achievable than saying, right, well, if you're... you live on that street over there. Well, sorry, you're outside the catchment area, so therefore you're going to be charged an extra 30%.
An important thing consider as well, particularly when they're putting ticket prices up, is that not everyone who doesn't have a season ticket can afford to regularly be faithful. You know, I think like kind of framing it as an authenticity thing is slightly ludicrous.
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing with tickets, season tickets, we know that that's not where club revenue comes from really.
No.
Yeah. Like the bulk of it.
But the idea that you're not faithful if you don't pay to come all the time is
well. But this is how someone like Sir Jim and those kind of people. Your worth is in how much money you have.
Sure.
If your season ticket is 5% of the money that you make at 20 grand or whatever a year, it's just not happening, is it? Before tax.
And we know, as I say, TV revenue is far more of a money spinner and so on and so forth.
But it's they're betting on the things that they know they can control, because they can't control whatever deal comes across Radcliffe's desk in the next few months, but they can control what they've got, and they, you know, it's those old kind of football management games from like the 90s where on the Amiga where you just sort of turn up the ticket price and people would stay away, and then you turn it down again. It's just a dial that they can sort of turn and sort of go, well, we're doing something, but they're not really.
Yeah. Right, gentlemen, I think we should have a break and calm down and talk about something a little lighter. Question here from Morgan on Blue Sky. What is your favourite international tournament that you can remember?
Oh,
come on.
Le Tournoi!
Go
on, Jimmy, get us off to a good start.
It's an interesting question, this, isn't it? Because, we've been doing this podcast for a long time, and we've discussed every international tournament we can remember at great length. And I think... actually, the last 3 World Cups have all been excellent. Have all been really, really good. And it's actually, I find it difficult to sort of pick between them. Yeah, I thought Russia was good.
Yeah.
Russia, Qatar,
Yeah. I thought Brazil was obviously Brazil had the craziness of the 7-1. I kind of sort of forget England's involvement in it, but don't worry about that.
That didn't last very long.
No, I just remember it being a really fun tournament. James Rodriguez and his amazing goal and his little cricket passenger.
True.
I just remember really enjoying a lot of the games. I think Qatar was amazing. I think I'm tempted to go towards Russia though, because England's involvement was such a surprise, and it was to get to a semi-final when we really weren't expecting much at all.
And it's the only tournament. Don't listen to it. It's the only tournament where expectation was like 0.
Yeah.
Everyone just thought that.
Well, maybe Euro 2012, but that was fine. So
wow,
yeah. But obviously, the achievement was very little. So that was really, really fun on a personal level as well, because it's the first tournament I remember clearly was USA '94. Got to remember the semi-finals were Sweden v Brazil and Italy v Bulgaria.
Yeah.
The joint top scorers were Hristo Stoichkov, as you might expect, one of the best players in the world at the time, and Oleg Selenko, because he scored 5 against Cameroon. Just got a lot of really good memories of it. Diana Ross, and all that stuff.
You wouldn't have been watching a lot of the games live, though, would you?
No, I think I watched a fair few of the games.
What time was your bedtime?
Well, I remember watching a lot of it, so ask Ian and Christine.
I love that your mum's got the same name as my mum.
It's good, isn't it?
Petey, what about you?
Son of Christine Peter Lawson. Actually, I mean, my first proper tournament was '94, and I loved Ireland's performance in there. I mean, was it really an Irish team? That's for them to decide, one would suggest. There's a lot of...
I'm staying out of that.
Not in a political sense, just there was a lot of people who were using a lot of like granddad, grandma kind of... My granddad, grandma was Irish. Yeah.
As I say, I'm staying out.
All right, fine. Can I go for the 1995 Copa America, please?
Of course you can!
Because I was so into this new discovery called soccer back then that during like fallow weeks, you were like, I need more football in my life. And back then, you couldn't just go on the internet. Yeah. So my mate would take me off Sky the overnight Copa America matches.
That's lovely.
And bring them in. And it was just, I don't remember a lot of it, but I remember the grainy VHSs. I remember Brazil going quite deep in it. I remember the US, I think they were 4th in the end, doing very well.
Were they the guest team?
They were, yeah. I think they were the guest team. But, Gary Batistuta doing stuff all on very grainy VHS.
Oh, this
stuff.
feels like a lost tournament.
I just want to know what Tino was up to.
It's like when you hear a B-side from a band you loved in the 90s that you'd never heard before, and it's clearly from the same sessions as the album you love, so it sounds like it. It feels like an alternative
one of those like weird
thing.
Iron Lung EP singles that Radiohead did.
Do you remember?
Actually, they did the OK Computer kind of sessions, didn't they? There's a couple of those came out that have this exact feeling.
Bore off. Do you remember who won it, Peter?
I think... Did Uruguay win it?
They did.
They played at home, weren't they?
They beat Brazil in the final at home. You're absolutely right, on penalties. Yeah. Tino and Colombia finished third. They beat the US in that third place match. Batistuta and Luis Garcia of Mexico were top scorers. Tino did get a couple of goals in the tournament.
I love it.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It was just that it just had everything that I was just starved of football and I needed more.
Yeah,
more.
I mean, some of the names,
American-based football, please.
Yeah, some of the names though, Mr. Wijnaldum, sorry, not Genie Wijnaldum. No. It was Eric Wijnaldum playing for the US.
Eric Wijnaldum.
Diego Simeone for Argentina, and you can imagine there was a fair few famous Brazilians in there.
Francis Scully got player of the tournament.
Yeah, Edmundo was there.
The animal.
Lovely.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. I wasn't expecting that.
No, me neither.
I'm not going to say 2018 because you've already said it, Jim. That would be boring. My first tournament was 1990. I'm surprised you didn't remember that.
I had vague memories of it. The USA 94 is the one where I've got clearer.
Yeah, 90 I remember very much so. But it's a bit of a boring answer. I suppose, Russia and Qatar were both great. I did enjoy both of those. But one tournament that really still captured my imagination, I think, was World Cup 98. Just I often make the case that it looked great, and in terms of star personnel, it's the best tournament I can remember.
Yeah, it was, and there's so much drama as well.
Yeah, but the names in there, and England went out sort of fairly early in the second round. Beckham scoring that free kick against Colombia and so on. So that tournament does stick in the memory for me. So if not 2018, because as you say that was great, then 98 was one that I vividly remember. Yeah, good question, Morgan. Certainly had a nice little trip down nostalgia way. Jim, you got the next one?
I do. Sandeep has been in touch, and apparently he submitted this question handwritten on a piece of lined paper.
Oh, how do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Presumably took a picture of it and sent it in.
Scanned it, sent it in. Who knows?
Yeah, popped it through the door. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Sandeep asks, which single performance from a player lives longest in your memory?
Ooh. As a fan of the 94 World Cup, Peter, I'm expecting you to say Mr. Robbie Baggio.
Yeah, well, he had quite a few in that tournament, didn't he? I think, is it single game performance?
That's how
interpret it. Interpret it as you will, because you could say his performance at that World Cup was perfect.
Certain Irish defender in that match was very good.
Paul McGrath, of course, against Italy.
I'm going to go for, I can't remember what match it was, but Peter Beasley for Hartlepool.
Hey!
I was at Hartlepool, and he was like a Premier League footballer in the worst team I've ever seen.
Right.
And it was like a real, like when they play Soccer Aid and Henri plays and he's passing to, I don't know, Stormzy or something.
Mers.
You know what I mean? Ollie Mers or something. And the level is just so different. And he's putting balls into places where he thinks players are going to run into. But it was a real, Peter Beasley was my favourite footballer at the time and continued to be so up until a certain point. And but he was a wonderful sight to see, watching him just put balls into space for nobody to run into. So for the wrong reasons, that's one of the more memorable sort of performances in a Hartlepool on Newcastle shirt.
No, that's good. It's something that none of us can surely know, so we'll take your word for that one. Jim, what about you? Any particular?
So I've got a few, obviously, but one that sticks in my mind a lot, actually, and there's a bit of sadness to it as well, is Neymar against PSG in 2017 in that game where Barcelona were 4-0 down from the first leg, and they turned it around, won the game 6-1.
Yeah.
Sergio Roberto got the very, very late winner with a ball from Neymar, I believe. And Neymar, he scored a brilliant free kick in that goal. He was just everywhere, and everyone was buzzing about him. I think it was a big part of why PSG went so hard and paid such a massive fee to get him.
Yeah.
I just think, obviously, the story of Neymar was almost that he wanted to get out of Messi's shadow, and I guess only he knows how true that is. But it was a truly masterful performance in one of the greatest turnarounds in the history of the game, really. And it was just like an absolute magician. And there's a sense that why didn't he just stay there?
Yeah,
why didn't he just stay there and do that more?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that was always We'll always think that about Neymar, I think, in Europe, certainly. I don't know if many others would do that.
Another couple that stick in my mind are Zlatan Ibrahimovic against England in 2012 because of the context of it. So there's a lot of people saying that he would never cut it in England if he played there, and he scores 4 goals, including a 30-yard free kick and a last-minute overhead kick from outside the box.
He was on one, wasn't he?
He very, very definitively put that argument to bed in a very impressive way. And also Ashley Cole pocketing Cristiano Ronaldo in Euro 2004 I couldn't believe how good an individual performance that was at the time. He was very good in the same situation in 2006 as well. And obviously Ronaldo wasn't quite the beast that he later became, but he was still inarguably one of the best players in the world. And it was an unbelievably flawless performance from Ashley Cole.
Yeah, no, Ashley Cole was very, very good at that.
Scored his penalty as well.
He did. So I'm trying to, it was Beckham v Greece is always one. Ronaldo for Real Madrid at Old Trafford that time.
Yeah.
When
Kaká had a great performance at Old Trafford as well.
I'm glad you said that because Kaká is one of my favourite players of all time. That glide he had. And I think he's kind of... I think he was the last player to win the Ballon d'Or before Messi and Ronaldo started taking over, and he won it in 2007. And that performance at Old Trafford in the semi-final of the Champions League, where he scores 2 goals, and Manchester United actually won that leg 3-2 with Rooney scoring a couple of goals, but then Milan won 3-0 in Milan, and Kaká scored the first one. So his performance, you could say, over the 2 legs. But I absolutely loved him. I thought he's a glorious, glorious footballer with so much going on in his game. And to see him when he exerted that kind of dominance, albeit for maybe just a period of the game, because as I say, they lost that first leg, but they handsomely went through, and then they beat Liverpool in the final that year, getting revenge from 2005. To see him in full flow was a sight to behold, and so I get starry-eyed when I think of Kaká.
Because he feels like one of those sort of slightly slight, small playmakers, but he's 6'1". There's something really interesting about such a tall player moving in such an elegant way.
I think he kind of bridges the gap, because you remember some of those playmakers from, say, the 90s and maybe early 2000s who might be seen as luxury players now, who wouldn't be able to get to elite level because of the physical demands of the game. And to me, he has a feel of being a throwback in that kind of glides around the pitch and so on, but actually had the modern, could face the demands of modern football with the energy, with his strength, and so on and so forth. So a lovely player. So I remember those performances. And then the other one is, I suppose not too dissimilar, but different, was Manchester United again, but on the receiving end again, the Champions League final in 2009.
The agenda is clear.
Absolutely right, Jim. The Champions League final in 2009, where you and I attended, Jim, in Rome.
I know. I saw it.
You're going full keys on me here. When Barcelona beat Manchester United 2-0. And it was Guardiola's first season as Barcelona manager, and he won the lot. It's most successful season as a manager, I believe.
I think they won 6 trophies that year. They won everything they were in the calendar year.
It was incredible. And he hadn't gone full Guardiola yet because it was his first season, but it was there. And that was the game, as a fan of the Premier League and living in this country, the way that Anders Iniesta played in that game, you were like, oh my goodness, that's how you do it. Now, he wasn't actually given man of the match. Xavi was given UEFA man of the match. I think Messi was given like the fans player of the match, which is not too surprising. He scores the goal and the whole world was in love with him. But Iniesta's performance, I remember so many people the next day at work and friends and so on were talking about him. And the way he just, again, glided, had the ball, and he did all the things that were quite almost anti-Premier League. He held the ball. He didn't play Hollywood passes, although he could. He didn't look like he was sprinting every time. All the kind of physical attributes that we loved, and still love, they're still valid, don't get me wrong. But he just did it in a different way, and that became the way to do things for certainly the next handful of years. You could argue people still do it, but that changed football. It was Guardiola, of course, but he was such an important component of that side, and bringing those ideals and those methods onto the pitch. And that performance, the way he just didn't give the ball away, he was going in between the lines. Like, there's a moment in the game, I think, when Carrick, who was a brilliant player, of course, and they were the 2 best sides in Europe. Rare you get that in the final. Without a doubt, the 2 best sides in Europe. Carrick just looks at the bench and throws his arms up as if to say, "What are we playing?
Freaks.
Yeah, are we playing against 12 men here?" And Iniesta to me just totally embodied that. And it was just, I remember, Jim, because obviously we're not Manchester United fans, but we were on a Manchester United team fan bus on the way back, and we were just like, we had to keep it quiet because
Yeah.
we were in awe
Just
of that.
buzzing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted Manchester United to win, blah, blah, blah. But Barcelona, like the performance in
It was a
particular.
clinic.
Yeah, in particular with Iniesta, you were just in awe. You'd witnessed greatness. And for me, he was the one that caught my eye the most that night. So that is a performance that will live very long in my memory. And it was a joy to be there. It absolutely was. Peter, you've got the final question.
From Harry on Instagram, with Disney bringing out the latest of their fairy tale story into film projects this week, which fairy tale football story would you most like to see turned into a film?
Zambia winning the Africa Cup of Nations. Yeah. Who is playing Harvey Renard?
Yes.
Oh,
Gerard
my
Depardieu, a
goodness.
young Gerard Depardieu. Has to be.
Yeah.
How is he getting a mention?
Maybe Nikolai Costa-Waldau
Right, yeah, okay, fair. Yeah.
could play Harvey Renard.
He's got a good old conk on him, hasn't he?
I'm thinking
Yeah.
someone... What about Zac Efron? He's a good-looking guy. He's got the body.
Maybe.
It's Disney, Jim. It's Disney.
It is Disney.
Yeah.
Disney.
Don't throw any
Disney.
kind of sensible and decent casting out the window.
Yeah, you're right. How about the tale of a plucky pair of presenters reinventing themselves in the Middle East
Yes. Yes, please.
after being
Like-
hounded out
Like
there?
fish out of water stuff. And you're trying to buy booze everywhere.
Life, my friend. So a lot of fairy tales are actually cautionary tales, aren't they? The initial sort of grim fairy tales are quite dark. So
And often end on a quite a rough note, you might say.
indeed. So I'm thinking maybe The Curse of Bella Gutmann might make a good adaptation. Obviously, it involves Benfica actually breaking it for it to have a kind of happy ending. But if you're unfamiliar with The Curse of Bella Gutmann, he was the Hungarian manager of Benfica.
Lots of teams.
Many teams, but he had particular success with Benfica. They beat Barcelona in the European Cup final in 1961. Then Real Madrid fans spent the next year taking the piss out of Barcelona about that. And then Benfica beat Real Madrid in the 62 final. Bella Gutmann then asked the chairman for a pay rise. Chairman said no, and the story is that as he stormed out of the chairman's office, Gutmann said, "Not in the next 100 years will Benfica win a European trophy. They still haven't since. They've lost 8 European finals since then. People take this curse very, very seriously, and I think that's really funny."
Do you not think that he probably said that every time he was hoovered
maybe.
out of a club?
Maybe. But I mean, I don't believe in curses, but at the same time, this one is still active. Another
compulsive.
one, Greece winning the Euro 2004, but like in the style of 300.
Ooh.
Right, nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Like that.
Yeah.
Let me take you back, guys, to 2003.
Yeah.
A young David Dunn is sat at his breakfast buffet bar talking to his wife, and his wife is pleading with him not to attempt the Rabona. And he very much wants to attempt the Rabona.
Yeah.
And it's all just about this kind of like, it all building up to the match. in
Short
which he
film at best, this.
attempts a Rabona. Will he manage it?
Yeah.
Will he not manage it?
Pixar animated short.
Pixar animated
And
short.
that's the
where
grand
David-
finale. He doesn't do it.
No, it's his entire life up until that point.
Oh, right.
And then
it
even
just
worse.
fades to black.
And then, yeah, it's fades to black. Yes, it is.
worse.
You know.
It's like when Queen wanted to go on further. When he was, I can't remember talking to the guy who plays Borat, sort of saying
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Sacha Baron Cohen, that he said Sacha Baron Cohen I think was going to be playing Freddie Mercury, and then
Yes, that's right, yeah.
somebody out of Queen said, Brian May said, "Oh, it'd be good because then like when Freddie Mercury dies, and then the film will continue on with us, doing being a much worse band, and so it'll be like that. But instead, the whole film ends when David Dunn attempts just as he sort of leans back, as it's slow motion." Maybe a bit of Mogwai on,
Right.
And he
Like the
and he's
Zidane film.
like the Zidane film, and he's just about to do it. And he goes, done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What a way to finish. Thanks for listening to the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network. All three of us will be back on Monday with Andy to react to the weekend's football. And please do send your responses, opinions and questions for next week's episode, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, Jimmy.
See ya.
Thanks, PT.
Farewell.
See you on Monday, everybody.